and girls. Today we are learning about settlement types and patterns, okay? So, firstly, we're going to talk about settlement types. Now, there are two types of settlements. The first is a rural settlement, okay? And these settlements are generally small. They are sparsely populated and mostly farmland, okay? So when we talk about sparse, if a place is sparsely populated, that means that there are a few people that live there. We're going to learn about some of these terms as we go on, and sparsely is one of them, okay? So these rural areas are sparsely populated and mostly farmland. There is a low density population, so there are few people in rural settlements. So when we hear the words sparse and low density, we're thinking about few. So, for example, we live in the Bahamas, okay? And we have different islands and keys, and individuals and communities are on these islands and keys, okay? And some will realize that some of these islands, especially those outer islands that are far away from the capital and from the hustle and bustle of the Bahamas, will find that some of those islands are what we would call rural, okay? Sparsely and populated and with a low density, okay? The other type of settlement type is urban. So the first type that we discussed was rural. And the second that we're discussing is urban, okay? And these settlements are usually large. So when we think about urban, we're thinking about the city where all of that hustle and bustle happens. You're seeing businesses, food stores, restaurants, attractions, tourist attractions, attractions for locals, jobs, skyscrapers, if any, and things like that in this urban settlement, okay? And they are densely populated with many people. So we learn some terms. There's low density and high density. Rural areas and rural settlements are low density, meaning that they have few people. Urban settlements are high density, meaning that they are full of many people, okay? So those are the two types of settlements. So now that we've learned the types, we're going to learn about settlement patterns. And there are three main settlement patterns. The first is nucleated, linear, and then dispersed. So we're going to go through those three settlement patterns. The first is nucleated settlements. Now, here is a real life image of a nucleated settlement. And when you think about a nucleated settlement, you can think of a nucleus inside of the cell. When we learn about this in geography and science, in geography mixed with science, we know that the nucleus is something inside of the cell that is just a clump, and it powers the cell. Along with the powerhouse of the cell, you also have the nucleus, which controls everything, okay? So when you think about a nucleated settlement, you can relate it to the nucleus of the cell, where it's this little, this little clump right there. And it is a clustered settlement with a large number of buildings or houses that are constructed very close together. They often form at crossroads, root centers, river valleys, or fertile plains, okay? So they're located at beneficial locations for the settlement. They were initially created this way in this cluster pattern for defensive purposes and later for social and economic reasons. The communities are closely knit and share common professions. This is another example of a nucleated settlement. The second is a dispersed settlement, and this is a real life example of one as well. Now, opposite from the nucleated settlement, the dispersed settlement has no obvious center. The houses are separated far apart and often scattered with fields. These settlements occur in areas of adverse physical difficulties where natural resources are insufficient to support more than a few people, okay? And a cultural characteristic such as a place of worship or a market or a school or a business forces the settlement to come together, okay? And this is another image of a dispersed settlement. We see that every building and house is scattered across this field. And the last settlement is a linear settlement. And the linear settlement looks like this, or can look like this. And these settlements grow along a road, for example, in a narrow valley or along the coast. They can also grow along a railroad, canal, river valley, a dike, or other transport routes, okay? So you can see they're forming right on top of the road. They're right on that road, okay? And this is another diagram showing you better the different settlement patterns, okay? So thank you very much. I hope you learned a lot. Goodbye.